Hello friends! Today's a video that I'm really excited for because over the last year I have been tracking all of my finances in Notion, and I feel like a lot of the budget trackers are more geared toward Google Sheets, and I personally just prefer the way that Notion looks. So I've been trying to figure out a way to share my tracker with people, but I had built in a lot of custom features. It took me a lot of work to get set up, and I just wasn't quite sure the best way to templatize it. And over the last couple months, I have finally figured it out. So today I'm going to be walking you through my 2025 finance hub is usually what I call it, but you can call it a budget tracker, finance planner, whatever you want. And I'm going to show you everything you need to do to get started with it. Okay, I have my example template pulled up. We're going to go through and fill it out together. I'm also going to be including timestamps throughout this video so you can skip to whatever part you need, especially if you already have access to the template and you just want help filling out one specific section. All of the timestamps will be included. So first things first, after watching this video, or if you're following along, you are going to enter your accounts and sinking funds. So these are all of your buckets of money. The way that I like to break my money down is into my accounts. So like checking account, savings account, any investment accounts I have. Every separate financial institution, even credit cards, gets its own account page. And then within some of those accounts, I have sinking funds. If you've never heard this term before, a sinking fund is basically just a bucket of money that you're going to use at some point relatively soon, not money that you're saving for the future for retirement. And the way I've set this up, you can kind of designate the purpose behind each of these accounts. So the first thing we're going to do to add a new account is you can click this new page button here, but little tip, you can save yourself some time by clicking the drop down next to new, and then you can select whatever type of account it is. So you'll see all of the preset templates I've set up here. And let's start with a checking account. I've entered the account name, and now all of the initial fields that we need to populate are over here on the right side in the detail panel. You'll also notice in all of my different pages, I've kind of customized the layout, and if you scroll down, or maybe you can even just see it without scrolling down depending on your screen size, you should see some information or some kind of like instructions highlighted in a colored box. And this will just tell you how you can get started with setting that page up. So here, all of the things that we're going to enter are going to be in this detail window over on the right. And for a checking account, the only thing we need to enter is a starting balance. So let's say that I have $1,000 in my checking account. That's the only thing I need to enter for this account type. So now I can click off. And you'll see here, just as a reminder, if I hadn't done this already, it'll have those details there. So now I'm just gonna go through and add in some other accounts. All of my initial accounts have now been set up, and now I'm gonna show you what would happen if you were to just click new page. And here you can see that nothing auto-populates, but you can just go ahead and enter whatever. So let's say I'm gonna do my travel fund now. And if I scroll down, I can see all the different lists of accounts. So if you want to be really speedy, you can always just hit new and enter in all your names and then go back and populate everything later. But it's really just up to personal preference and how you want to fill it out. So coming down here for travel, I'm going to walk you through how I would set up a fund. So from here, I'm going to set up a sinking fund. I have a few different fund types, and I'm going to talk through kind of the way that I use them or my mindset behind differentiating them. But essentially the only thing that makes them different is for my purposes of color coding things in Notion and breaking things down into different views. You'll see on some other pages that they show up under different headings depending on what type of fund they are. And for the sinking fund, if I scroll down, there's a few more things I need to enter here than for just my basic accounts. So I'll enter a starting balance and a target amount. And then I'll also pick a parent account. So here I'm gonna go in and it shows me all of the other accounts I've already created. And this sinking fund lives in my savings account. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on my SoFi savings. And then if I click out, they're connected now. And we'll go over that in a little bit when we do the review, but for now I'm just gonna add one more fund to show you an example, and this is my emergency fund. So I'm gonna scroll down, and for this one I would do a saving fund. This is like, I have money set aside in case something happens, but I'm not necessarily planning on touching it. That's how I see a savings fund. Sinking fund, again, is those things that I'm saving for, I'm gonna use the money at some point. Maybe it's like a recurring thing, like I pay my car insurance every year, so I put money into it every single month. And then at that once a year time, I withdraw everything from that section of my savings and pay that bill. One-time purchase is something that I'm saving up for, so maybe it's like a really nice coat, some kind of electronic, some bigger purchase that I probably just can't fit into my monthly budget, but I want to track my savings toward it. And then a tax fund, so this is in case you have any kind of income that you need to set aside money for taxes. I have a separate tax fund as well. But for this one, we're going to pick saving fund. And again, I'm going to enter a starting balance, a target amount, and my parent account is going to be my same savings account. But you can see here, you can pick any account to be your parent account. And one more thing on here that I want to point out, if I go back to that SoFi savings, I can see now on the right-hand side, it's starting to show me all the funds that are included in this account. So for my savings personally, I don't keep any money in my actual savings account. Everything's broken down into a fund. So I left my starting balance empty, and then I just have my funds that are adding up to this total that shows the current balance. Some other little things that I'm gonna go in and clean up. I have notes sections, and they're kind of pre-populated depending on what the account type is. So for a savings account, it just shows what your annual return is if you have a high yield savings account. So I'm just gonna go in here and update that. And I've been updating this on some of my other accounts, and you'll see in different displays where those notes show up. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and jump over to our completed tab, because from here, we can just review and make sure that all the fields we need are populated. So here we have all of our account names. It has our account types, which filled in from that template. We have our starting balances for everything except our savings account. We have some notes in here. If I scroll over, I can see that I have target amounts in here for my funds, and they have parent accounts as well. And then you'll see the last column over here I want to call out is the net worth column. And this basically just filters into a calculation that tells you across all of your accounts what your net worth is. That shows up on a few different pages, and as long as you're making all your accounts with the templates, you shouldn't have any issues here. But that should be it. It looks like we have all of our accounts set up, and I'm just going to close step 1 and open up step 2. So here we're going to add in links to all of our different financial institutions, bank accounts, 401ks, anything like that. Anything that we want to have easy access to, we can add our links to in here. And then over here on the right, we're just going to add in what our expected monthly take home is. If you have a salary, this should be pretty straightforward. If you get paid every other week, I would say just budget for 2 paychecks, even though sometimes you may have a 3 paycheck month. And if you have less regular income, I would go personally based on the lower end. Whenever I'm budgeting, I like to be a little bit more conservative. So whatever you're expecting based on kind of the minimum hours you would work in a month. And another note here, this is going to be after taxes. So this is your take home, not if you were to divide your salary by 12, what would that be? This is the actual money that you're seeing hit your accounts after taxes and other things are taken out. Now we're gonna go ahead and create our budget, which is the fun part to me. I like playing around with all the numbers and seeing how we can make different things work, but this is going to be kind of a living budget. We're not going to create a new budget every single month. We're going to create this one budget, set it up, and then make minor tweaks each month. Anyway, I've included some pre-populated categories just based off of my own budget, things that I've seen other people include, just to make it easier if you're getting started. You don't have to come up with every single category name on your own, but absolutely feel free to get more specific than this, less specific than this, do whatever makes sense for your brain. Change the icons, like make this look more fun or enticing or whatever makes you want to click into this and look at it at the end of every month, do that. Another thing you can do is just go through your old bank statements, credit card statements, whatever, if you're not really sure how much you spend in a certain category, if you're just getting into budgeting. So I'm gonna enter some example numbers and then go through a few of the other columns. All right, so I have most of my numbers in. I'm gonna leave a few blank because at the end of this, we're gonna review and make sure that our total of what we've planned to spend matches our take-home pay. And I want to see how much wiggle room I have in some different categories before I put those numbers in. So this is something you might also want to do if you're not just copying over a budget from some other tool that you're using right now. It may be good to leave some categories open and then see what that total ends up coming to before you fill them out. So I've just left my miscellaneous wants and my short-term savings empty, and we're gonna put those in later. So the next thing here is category. These are all preset for the items that I've listed out already, but if you want to change it, you can always click in here and change the category. So the categories I've created are needs, wants, short-term, which is like short-term savings, and then investments, so long-term savings. You can add more categories if you want to. These are really just going to drive a chart that you'll see later in the template, but it's just going to show you a breakdown of how you're spending your money based on these categories. The only reason that I don't have debt as a specific category in here is because I feel like any of those longer term things like a mortgage, a car, student loans, you can include in the needs category with your just like fixed bills. I would really rather anyone who's paying off any kind of like high interest credit card debt use a free option or something that's more geared toward people who are paying off debt. My tracker is more to track like savings and investing and check in on like daily expenses and progress toward the monthly budget. It's less for someone who's paying off debt. So if you're watching this video and that's how you found out about this, please do not buy it if you have a lot of credit card debt. I'm gonna include a note on the page as well so that hopefully anyone who is looking to buy it knows that and can check out my free version or check out another tool that's more geared at debt payoff. So next up we have tags, and here we have a few different options, and these are just going to drive some different views again. So just like how our different account types are gonna show up in different views on the pages, our different tags here are gonna have these items show up in different views. So I'm just gonna go through rent as an example and then maybe show another example or two. But for rent, I'm gonna say this is a fixed expense, this is monthly, and none of the other tags apply. Down here a little bit further, you'll see miscellaneous wants. I have this listed as a life improver, and this is something I'm trying to track. I'm trying to remind myself of how much money I'm actually spending on things that make my life better. And you can kind of use this however you want. You could use this for, like I said, like miscellaneous wants. If you have a line item that's like getting your nails done or like getting a facial, like those kinds of things that you're doing for yourself, I think it's important that not only we put those things in our budget, but that we call out that we're doing something good for ourselves, because I think it's good to see that a certain percentage of your money is going towards things that are really important to you, especially if you're the kind of person who is more into saving and you find that it's hard to spend money on yourself. Anyway, all of that aside, another tag that's kind of important is pre-tax. So I like tracking how much money goes into my 401k and some of my other pre-tax accounts, but I don't want them to show up when I'm looking at any kind of like take-home totals. So it will just take anything that's tagged with pre-tax out of those views where you're looking at take-home pay only items. And the last one I want to call out is this monthly tag. So anything that we tag with monthly will show up on our next tab, which says monthly, enter day due. And the idea of this is that you're going to see a section later where we can see all of our monthly bills and whether or not we've paid them yet this month, and it resets every month automatically. So I'm going to go through and just tag a few more things with monthly. Okay, and now we're gonna jump to that other tab. All right, so now you can see all of the things that I've listed with monthly, and now I can enter the day due. So let's say my rent is always due on the 1st, maybe my fitness membership is due on the 10th, my power bill is due on the 25th, and my internet is due on the 4th. So that's all you need to do on this tab. Now we're going to go to the 3rd tab and just review our take-home pay. So here, this total at the bottom should equal our take-home pay. And I think I set our take-home pay to be $5,000 a month, and we have only budgeted $26.85. So that means that in my miscellaneous wants and my short-term savings, I can do a lot with that. This is also where you'll probably start breaking things down into more detail if you haven't already. So I may want to track things like home goods versus just random shopping versus clothes versus whatever else. And I may also want to break down some of my short-term savings. So like setting aside money for travel versus building up an emergency fund versus money for a future house, that kind of stuff. And this is where you can do that. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and put 500 into miscellaneous wants, and then the rest of it I'm gonna just dump into short-term savings. So now our total at the bottom here comes to 5,000. I know every dollar of my monthly income has been planned, and I am all done with making my budget. Another little tip here, just like with the accounts, you can use the little drop down next to new to add a new want, need, new short-term savings, or new investment, or you can just copy the existing categories. So let's say I wanted a new short-term savings. I could click here and then click the little 3 dots up at the top and hit duplicate. So you can duplicate things. It's really up to you. I think if I right-click on here as well, I can duplicate it. Yeah, so you can do a lot of things to make new pages. You can even just click new page at the bottom and type in whatever, and then open it up. And just like the accounts, you can designate it as need, want, what have you. Just going to delete that. And then from here, my numbers are off. Okay, let's fix that. As I was editing this, I realized I completely left off part of the instructions, and that is filling out our first monthly report. This is something that you just need to do at the beginning of every month. We're just entering 2 numbers, and then you're done. Everything else will just calculate automatically for you. So at the beginning of a new month, or when you're setting this up for the first time, you're going to click into your month, and from there, it's going to give you your current monthly life cost and your save rate. I like to store these numbers so that I can keep track of them each month, and the best way to do that is just keeping them in your monthly report. So we're just going to essentially copy and paste those numbers into the field in the monthly report, and now they're stored for historical data if we want to refer back to them and just see how our spending habits change over time. Okay, perfect. We are almost done. And the last couple things are optional. So first optional thing is setting up a low/no buy. And if you are perfectly happy with your current spending habits, you have no notes for yourself, you feel good about it, you can just totally disregard this. So you can just delete this no buy, low buy page from the navigation menu and just not even worry about it. But if you do want to set some goals for yourself, especially going into the new year, make some sort of New Year's resolution, this doesn't have to mean like spending less money overall or like becoming a minimalist or anything like that. But if you feel like you've been spending more money than you would like in certain areas, like dining out, like clothes, like whatever the case is, you can add it to your low/no buy. And when I click into this page, I can set up anything green, yellow, or red. And this is a very project manager thing of me to do, but it works for my brain, so I hope it works for other people too. I've seen other people do this for their low buy or no buy, and I think that it just makes sense. So green is going to be anything you're allowed to buy. This is just a reminder to yourself that you're not fully restricting what you're buying. It's just certain categories. And you can get as granular as you want. This is really just up to you and what you need to see. Then we can set anything yellow. So this is things you want to be careful of. For me this year, one of my yellow categories was dining out and also haircuts. So I cut back on the number of haircuts I was getting. This didn't mean that I couldn't get any haircuts, but it did mean that I wanted to go less frequently. And part of this was because my stylist raised her prices and I didn't want to put extra money in my budget for the same frequency of haircut. So I just started going less often, that kind of thing. Also, dining out's a really good one. Maybe you still want to go out to eat every now and then, maybe cut back from almost every night to a few times a week. Put those kinds of goals here. And then red is things you are not allowed to buy at all. So this year I told myself, you're not allowed to buy any puzzles. I went crazy and I bought a ton of puzzles in 2023 and that was really fun, but I still have those puzzles and they're still really great and they're really good quality and I can redo them if I want to do puzzles. So I told myself I wasn't allowed to buy any puzzles. I would say that your red list shouldn't be too long, especially if you've never done anything like this before. I picked some very specific things that I knew were reasonable for me to not spend any money on throughout the year. And I'm gonna go through how my year went in a totally different video, but I thought having some examples for anyone who's never seen anything like this before would be helpful. Another section that I've added here is removed. So you can just use this to drag and drop anything into this removed heading. Let's say I added dining out to yellow and then I decided, you know what, I don't really care. Maybe I got a raise, maybe something happened, maybe my expenses dropped for some reason. I moved in with a roommate or a partner. And now I don't really care if I dine out that much because it fits in my budget better. So I'm gonna move this down to removed and you just drag and drop it in here and it'll just keep a running list of things that you've removed. I think this is just good for reflection so you can remember what you started the year with, but every time you go in there, you're not reminded of things that you're no longer considering. And then below that, we have wish list. So this is just a running list of anything that you want to buy. I think that it's good to keep this in a few different areas across this template, just depending on what you're looking at. It may be nice to have easy access to your wish list when you're doing different kinds of planning. And one of the places I have it is in here. So anytime you come in here, maybe you have something under your yellow category and you're trying to be a little bit more thoughtful about it. Maybe that's clothes. Maybe you just dump links in here whenever you find something when you're online shopping, and then you check it like once a month and then decide if you still really want those things. I made a Pinterest board for myself and I would just drop links in there whenever I found something I wanted to buy online. So you can just link something here, or you can just do them as like bullet points, whatever works best for you. I think that it's good to have this as kind of like a collapsible drop down so you can check in on it every now and then. And now we're going back home and we finished that. And the last optional thing is just to customize some of the buttons. So you'll see down here, I have this quick actions section, and these buttons are really powerful and they're really cool and I really like them. So the default ones that I have are pretty basic, but you can customize them a lot once you get this set up and make it really easy for yourself to do different things. So a few of the ways you can edit the buttons and customize them for yourself are just to kind of mouse over them, and you'll see this little settings cog pop up. And if you look here under whatever page is being added, so the buttons always tell you when the button is clicked, it will do XYZ actions. And the first one is usually just making a new page, and we're making a new expense here. And I can add a property. So let's say that every time a new expense is generated, I want it to actually fill in the month for me. And I'm gonna say, I'm testing this right now in December, I'm gonna say I want it to be December test. So I'm actually gonna change this to be December expense. And I'm just gonna change the icon to remind myself and hit done. So now every time I click this button, instead of just making a generic new expense, it's going to make a new expense for December. And I don't have to go in and click the month every time. Another thing you can do is add additional pages. So if I edit my payday button, this is a really good example. Maybe on payday, I have money that goes into my checkings account, my savings account, and then some kind of investment account. So when I get my paycheck, I don't want it to just create one page and me have to then distribute it to all these different accounts whenever I'm updating my Notion tracker. I want to just click payday and it sends that amount of money to all the different accounts it's supposed to. So here I'm just going to duplicate this action as many times as I need it. And for my case, I need 3 different accounts. So the first one is going to be new income, and I am going to say paycheck, checking. And now I'm going to go ahead and click 2, and now I can pick my checking account. I'm going to pick amount, and I can say maybe 4,000 goes to checking. So now every time I click this payday button, it's going to make a new page. It's going to send $4,000 essentially to my SoFi checking. Close that and then open the next one, and this is going to be paycheck savings. And I'm going to add an amount, and we'll say 500 is going to go to my SoFi savings. And then the last one, we're going to do paycheck invest, and then I'm going to say 500, that is going to go to my Roth IRA. And the last thing that I'm going to do here for my Roth IRA one specifically is I'm going to set a category. Our default category is going to be not applicable for all of this, but for my Roth IRA, I actually want it to track towards that category in my budget so I can see the progress throughout the month of after my first paycheck, I'm halfway there. After my second paycheck, I'm all the way there. So I'm actually going to add a category for this one. And I could do this for my savings too, category. And I can just pick short-term savings. So let's say I want it to track towards that goal. Alrighty. And then now the last thing I'm going to edit here for myself is the final step. It's going to open our first page, but I actually want it to open, my missing info page. And I'm going to hit done. And now we're going to go ahead and test out our payday button. And we'll see that it created our 3 paychecks. It sent them to the correct accounts with the correct categories, but the one thing that it didn't do was our month. And this is something that I do in my current budget template. I will just select all of them, click on month, and then click on December for my testing. And now they all go away. So this is just a page that shows you anything that has missing information. So anytime you have a button where you're adding multiple pages, you want to make sure that you link it to this missing info page so you can go through and see everything and make sure that it's all cleaned up. But if you don't want to do that, there's other ways to get there, so I'll show you that in just a minute. The last thing we're going to go over here is duplicating buttons, and paying credit cards is a really good example of this. If you have more than one credit card, you can duplicate this button and then pre-fill it for those different cards. So let's say you have a Capital One card and that card gets paid by a certain checking account. You can pre-fill in those fields and then set a different option for a different credit card. So I'm just going to right click on this button and hit duplicate. And now I'm going to edit the button and say pay Capital One. And now I'm going to set in here where it has my credit card payment. I'm going to say this is from my checking account to my Capital One card, and then hit done. And then I can do the same thing for the next one and just set a from and a to account, rename it. This makes it really easy to keep up with. So my whole goal with this is that this is all set up in a way that you can use it every day. You can really quickly enter in expenses. You can really quickly press one button on payday and have everything generate. You can really quickly kind of check off that you've paid your credit card for the month. And this keeps everything up to date with your current account balances. So all of your numbers are accurate. You have a really good handle on where your money is, and it's not tedious to keep up with. All right, and now that we have everything set up, I'm just gonna run through all the pages I have in here so you can kind of see a little preview of what they look like. So after you've completed all the instructions, you can just delete them, and then you're gonna be left with your home page. And here at the top, we have an overview where we have all of our account balances. We have our spendings accounts and our savings accounts you can toggle between, and just keep an eye on how much money you have where. Then we're going to have our variable expenses populating in. So as you spend money throughout the month, you'll see if I add an expense, and let's say I spent $100 on my credit card and I spent $100 on groceries, you'll start to see that your categories will show up here as you spend money throughout the month. So this is just showing that I have $200 left in this bucket to spend for the month. Then on the next tab, we have all of our recurring bills. So this will show you what date it's due that month and whether or not you've paid it. So as soon as you make a payment, let me go ahead and act like I've paid my rent. And I messed something up here, so I'm gonna show you how you can fix that if you accidentally click out of a page as you were typing in information. So down below, I'm gonna go to cleanup, and I can see my rent here, and I didn't finish entering my amount, so that was left blank. So now that's gone away. Now that I've entered it, I can close my cleanup section, and my rent is checked off for the month. Another section we have down here is everyday spending. So this is gonna show all of your transactions for the month that you've spent money. It's not going to show every single transaction, so like when you got paid, if you transferred money between accounts, but it will show any charges or anything where you've just sent money out. And below that, we have our wish list. So this is the same section from the low buy page. And then below that, we have our savings goals. So these are like our bigger buckets. We have an emergency fund here, travel fund, and then we can even add new goals from here. And I have these set up so that if you click into them and you add a cover, that cover page will show up. So if you're the kind of person who likes vision boards and stuff like that, you can really use the covers to make this area a little bit more exciting and like fun to look at. I think it's great to have on the home page and just some reminders of like images that go along with the things you're saving for. Then we'll take a look at the spending plan. So this is essentially our budget. In the middle here, we have kind of like a simplified version of our budget with everything all planned out. On the top right, you'll see a chart, and I don't have the paid version of Notion, so I can only have one chart, and that chart is in the original template that you will be copying from. But if you don't have any other charts on Notion, this will populate, and it will basically be like a breakdown of all these categories. So I'll put something on the screen so you can see what it's gonna look like, but unfortunately, I can't show you in the page. And then below that budget graphic, we're gonna have our life overview, and these are some of the things that I like to keep in mind. And then another handy little tool in the bottom left is different balances. So this is gonna show you how much money you have left to budget. So let's say that I hadn't budgeted for my short-term savings yet. It would show me exactly how much money I have left to put in that bucket or put in other buckets. And then it also shows you how much you have left to spend. So as you're going throughout your month and filling out your expenses, entering them every day, hopefully, this number will tick down and you can see how much money you have left to spend for the month based on how much you're expecting to make. And now we're gonna take a look at the accounts page. And this is going to show you all of your accounts up at the top, all of your active accounts. You can also view all of your accounts and see all the details of them in here. But you'll see we have a little toggle here and we can hide our active accounts, and it also has a section for inactive. So if you ever close an account, you can still keep it so that you're not just deleting it and clearing out all of that linked data from all these different pages that you may have connected that account to. You can just mark it as inactive and then it will filter out of our main tab. Then we have funds, so we have our sinking funds, we have our little wish list items, so like our one-time purchases, we have saving funds, and then tax funds. I just kind of grouped them by order of importance to me, or like what I want to focus on looking at, but obviously you can move all of these things around. That's why I love Notion so much, and it's so much more flexible than Excel. You can really decide what you want to look at on each page. You don't have to leave it exactly the way that I've set it up. And the last little thing on this page is your net worth. So that's going to show up in the top right. It will tally up your net worth. Now we're going to click on monthly reports, and this is going to show you your spending in different categories and just kind of give you an overview of how much you spent, show our little progress tracker, and then what is remaining. So this is just another view of that thing that we had on the home page, but I think that this is a little bit easier to look at, just to look at the raw numbers. And then we also have our month in review, so you can toggle this down and see planned versus spent versus remaining if you want to see all those categories in detail. This is something I would only look at like once a month at the end of the month, and most of the time I'd probably leave it closed. And then we have our monthly breakdowns. So I just want to show you a little peek behind the curtain here in case you want to change this. But I have this set up so that if I'm saving less than 10% of my income, it's going to say that I have a low save rate and it'll highlight it in yellow. If I'm saving less than 20% of my income, but more than 10%, it's going to say good save rate and put it in blue. And then if I'm saving more than 20%, it's going to say great and put it in green. Everything else is pretty straightforward. It just tallies up how much money came into your accounts versus how much money went out of your accounts. And for the expenses specifically, it's considering anything that you've assigned a category. So if you have some weird expense, like let's say you've been saving up for a trip and you finally buy your plane tickets one month, you probably want to mark that as NA for your category. You don't want to say that it was like a travel expense because it'll mess up some of the formulas, and you can kind of filter those one-off purchases out of your budget so that they don't affect your overall numbers. That's just how I like to do it. I found that's what works best for me. I can always go through and like filter by all my NA expenses if I want to analyze those. But anything that I'm using one of my sinking funds to pay for, I'll just put NA for the category because it's outside of my normal monthly budget. And the last few things, we have our life overview again on this page. And then I have a little savings overview where this just shows you your like bigger savings funds. So like my emergency fund, it'll show in here. And if I had anything else, it would show in here, like maybe I was saving for a house. Next, we have transactions. So this is just a way to audit or do a deeper dive if you need to look into some of your transactions. Maybe you entered something and you need to change it, but you can't find the page anymore. You can come into transactions and it's gonna list out everything. So the top section is that same cleanup, like missing info area. And then if you scroll down, I have a calendar view, which is new for me, but I think that it will be really helpful actually. So it will just put all of your items in a calendar view and you can click into them if you need to edit something. And then there's also view all, and this is just typical table view. It's gonna show all the different fields and you can edit them as you need, right? And then the last one, again, is the low no buy page. So if you filled this out, this is how you get to it. If you deleted it, then this is gone. Anyway, I think that is about it. So I am going to make a few edits to this because as I was doing it, I already found a few things I want to change. I am testing this all throughout the month of December and then posting this towards the end of the month. So hopefully I have all the kinks worked out, but if you come across anything you're having trouble with or anything that you think isn't calculating right, whatever, feel free to leave a comment and I'm happy to help with any kind of troubleshooting just through the comments of this video. And if you are interested in purchasing this, I'm gonna have the link down below. I'm gonna start making monthly budgeting videos next year, so this is the same tool that I'm gonna be using, and if you wanna use it too, you can follow along with me every month and we can fill it out together. But I hope that you guys like this. I hope that it's as helpful for you as it has been for me. I have been trying to figure out for months how to templatize everything I'm doing and how to explain ways to set up some of that extra customization, like with the buttons and other things that I've done for myself in hopefully a user-friendly way if you're at least a little bit familiar with Notion already. So please let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. If you need help setting up a button or customizing something, I would love to hear from you. And yeah, I hope that this is helpful, and thank you so much for watching.